A single moment can change everything. Imagine a galaxy where one Jedi Master makes a different choice, takes a different step, or finds a deeper connection to the Force at exactly the right time. This is the story of what might have happened if Qui-Gon Jinn had survived his encounter with Darth Maul during the invasion of Naboo. The story begins much like the one we know, the Trade Federation acting as puppets for a mysterious Sith Lord named Darth Sidious has blockaded the peaceful planet of Naboo. Their warships surround the world, choking off supplies in what they claim is simply a dispute over trade routes. But we know the truth. This is the first move in a much larger game. Queen Amidala, young ruler of Naboo, has escaped her besieged homeworld thanks to two Jedi Knights sent to resolve the crisis. Master Qui-Gon Jinn, a wise and somewhat rebellious Jedi, and his disciplined Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi. Their ship, damaged while breaking through the blockade, forces them to land on Tatooine, a desert planet controlled by the Hutts far from Republic space. It seems like a random detour, but the Force works in mysterious ways on this backwater world. Qui-Gon meets a 9-year-old slave boy named Anakin Skywalker. This chance encounter sends ripples through the fabric of destiny. The boy shows remarkable abilities, winning a dangerous pod race that secures parts for their ship and his own freedom. But there's something more about him. Qui-Gon tests his blood and discovers an unprecedented count of metachlorins, suggesting Anakin might be the prophesied chosen one, destined to bring balance to the Force against the Jedi Council's wishes. Qui-Gon secures Anakin's freedom from slavery, determined that the boy should be trained despite his age and emotional attachments to his mother, Shmi. The Council senses fear and uncertainty in Anakin's future, but return to Naboo with Queen Amidala, who has a bold plan to retake her planet from the Trade Federation. The Gungan army will engage the droid forces as a diversion, while the Queen and the Jedi infiltrate the capital city of the Trade Federation's Viceroy. But the Sith have their own plans. Darth Sidious has sent his apprentice, Darth Maul, to deal with the Jedi in the generator complex beneath the palace. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan face off against this fearsome warrior with his double-bladed red lightsaber. This is where our timeline splits from the one we know. In the original history, Qui-Gon is separated from Obi-Wan by energy shields. When they deactivate, he rushes forward and is fatally stabbed by Maul. Obi-Wan, witnessing his master's fall, fights with rage and eventually defeats Maul, who tumbles down a reactor shaft after being cut in half. But in this alternate reality, something different happens. When separated from Obi-Wan by the energy shields, Qui-Gon doesn't pace impatiently. Instead, he kneels and enters a state of deep meditation, connecting profoundly with the living Force. This moment of serenity grants strategy before it unfolds, anticipating the Sith apprentice's fatal strike with exceptional speed that surprises even his Padawan. Qui-Gon avoids Maul's attack and counters. His green lightsaber slices through Maul's body, sending the Sith apprentice tumbling down the reactor shaft. This victory comes not through rage or desperation, but through serenity and oneness with the Force. Maul survives. Meanwhile, the battle for Naboo continues, as it did in the original timeline. Young Anakin accidentally pilots a starfighter into space, finding himself in the battle. Not Force abilities, he destroys it from within, shutting down the droid army. The Gungan diversion works, and Queen Amidala captures Viceroy Gunray in the throne room. The celebration on Naboo unfolds with one crucial difference. Qui-Gon Jinn stands proudly beside his Padawan, with young Anakin beaming at his newfound mentor in the grand scheme of the galaxy. Valerum has been replaced by Senator Palpatine through a vote of no confidence. Just as before, Palpatine secretly Darth Sidious congratulates Qui-Gon on defeating a Sith warrior behind his politician's smile, though he's recalculating his grand plan. Qui-Gon's survival represents an unexpected variable, particularly given the Jedi Sith. After a millennium of absence, Qui-Gon, now respected for confirming the Sith's reemergence and defeating one in combat, has gained new influence within the Order. He uses this opportunity to once again press for Anakin's training. Master Yoda and Mace Wu remain concerned about Anakin's future, sensing fear and attachment in the boy. But Qui-Gon argues that these qualities make traditional Jedi training even more necessary, not less. Qui-Gon tells them the prophecy speaks of bringing balance. He suggests that perhaps their understanding of balance has become rigid and dogmatic. Over the centuries, the Council reluctantly agrees to allow Qui-Gon to train Anakin with conditions. Obi-Wan will be granted the rank of Jedi Knight after completing his trials and will assist in Anakin's training as needed. This arrangement allows Anakin to benefit from both Qui-Gon's intuitive living Force-focused approach and Obi-Wan's more traditional methods. As our first chapter closes, we see Anakin beginning his path as a Jedi under Qui-Gon's thoughtful guidance. The galaxy is sliding toward a clone war, but with a significantly altered trajectory for these central players. One moment of clarity in the heat of battle has changed everything, and the future that once seemed set in stone now flows with new possibilities. Time has a way of revealing the true impact of a single moment in the decade. Following the Naboo crisis, the ripple effects of Qui-Gon Jinn's survival spread throughout the galaxy. But nowhere are they felt more strongly than in the life of young Anakin Skywalker at 48 years old during the Naboo crisis. Qui-Gon brings a lifetime of wisdom to Anakin's training. His approach differs dramatically from how Obi-Wan would have handled it had fate taken a different turn, where the traditional Jedi path emphasizes detachment and strict adherence to the code. Qui-Gon follows a different philosophy during their meditation sessions. In the Room of 1,000 Fountains, Qui-Gon teaches Anakin that feelings are not the enemy. What matters is what you choose to do with them. This view stands in stark contrast to traditional Jedi teaching that emotions like fear, anger, and attachment inevitably lead to the dark side. Under Qui-Gon's guidance, Anakin learns to acknowledge his emotions, understand where they come from, and channel them productively rather than pushing them down. This emotional awareness becomes especially important 5 years into Anakin's training. The boy, now 14, still dreams of his mother, left behind in slavery on Tatooine. In the original timeline, these attachments would have been discouraged, creating a festering wound in Anakin's heart. But Qui-Gon recognizes the importance of this connection. Together they embark on an unauthorized mission to Tatooine, using credits Qui-Gon has quietly saved over the years. They purchase Moisture Farmer clears. This act of compassion prevents the trauma that would have pushed Anakin toward darkness following his mother's death at the hands of, and becomes a full Jedi Knight without the immediate responsibility of training. Anakin, he undertakes several important solo missions that help him grow as a Jedi. He sometimes assists with Anakin's training, providing a by-the-book perspective that balances Qui-Gon's more intuitive approach this dual education gives Anakin a richer understanding of the Force than he would have received from Obi-Wan alone. Chancellor Palpatine still takes a special interest in Anakin, recognizing his potential as a powerful Sith apprentice. However, Qui-Gon's presence throws a wrench in Palpatine's plans. The Jedi Master subtly encourages Anakin to think critically about the Chancellor's advice rather than accepting it without question. He teaches the boy to always question why someone offers what you desire most, planting seeds of healthy skepticism in his apprentice. As the years pass and political tensions rise throughout the involvement in political matters in council meetings, he argues that the Jedi should return to their role as peacekeepers rather than becoming entangled in Senate disputes. These positions often put him at odds with Mace, but earn him respect from those who share his worries about the Order's direction. Around 24 BBBY, about 8 years after the Naboo crisis, Qui-Gon begins investigating the death of Jedi Master Sif Odas and the mysterious origins of a clone army being produced on the planet Kamino in the original timeline. Obi-Wan would have followed this thread years later. Qui-Gon's inquiries uncover troubling connections between the clones, the Sith, and potential corruption within the Republic, though he cannot yet see the full scope of Palpatine's grand scheme. His suspicions continue to grow by bait. 10 years after the events on Naboo, Anakin is 19 years old and approaching the end of his formal Padawan training. His path crosses once again with Padme Amidala during a protection mission following assassination attempts on the former queen, now a senator. Just as in the original timeline, feelings develop between them, but here the timelines diverge once more. Instead of keeping his feelings secret, Anakin confesses them to Qui-Gon. His master explains that the Jedi Code forbids attachment because it can lead to fear of loss, which opens a path to the dark side. However, he adds that love itself is not inherently dark. It is how you respond to love that determines your path, rather than forbidding the relationship outright. Qui-Gon encourages Anakin to examine his feelings honestly and consider whether he can both love Padme and fulfill his duties as a Jedi. This nuanced perspective allows Anakin to approach his feelings with greater maturity instead of the secret, guilt-ridden romance that would have developed in the original timeline. Anakin and Padme explore their relationship more openly and thoughtfully, though still with discretion, given their public roles as the Separatist crisis reaches its breaking point. Tensions escalate across the galaxy. Count Dooku, once Qui-Gon's own master, has left the Jedi Order and now leads a confederation of star systems threatening to break away from the Republic. The situation deteriorates, rapidly culminating in a confrontation on the planet Geonosis. Anakin, Qui-Gon, and Obi-Wan find themselves in the front lines of what will soon become known as the Clone Wars, as battle droids surround them in the dusty Geonosian arena. The three Jedi ignite their lightsabers, standing back to back. Anakin is no longer the impulsive, emotionally conflicted young man he might have been. Instead, he faces this challenge as a confident Jedi, shaped by Qui-Gon's wisdom and balanced approach to the Force. The galaxy stands on the brink of a conflict that will test everything Anakin has learned, but thanks to one fateful moment in a Naboo generator complex a decade earlier, he faces these trials with a foundation that might just be strong enough to withstand the coming storm. War changes everything. What began as a separatist movement quickly explodes into full-scale conflict. Across hundreds of star systems, the Clone Wars have begun, and the Jedi find themselves thrust into roles they never wanted to fill. At 58 years old, when the war erupts, Qui-Gon Jinn reluctantly assumes the mantle of general. Despite his deep philosophical misgivings, he frequently reminds the Jedi Council that they are keepers of the peace, not soldiers. Yet, despite these objections, he serves the Republic with distinction, applying his unorthodox approach and connection to the living force to military strategy, where other Jedi commanders might rely on conventional tactics. Qui-Gon often finds unexpected solutions through his attunement to the Force. His unconventional methods save countless clone trooper lives while achieving objectives that seemed impossible. Clone commanders learned to trust his intuition even when his orders seemed to contradict military doctrine. Meanwhile, Anakin Skywalker, now a full Jedi Knight, quickly establishes himself as one of the Republic's greatest battlefield commanders. The public calls him the hero with no fear, as tales of his exploits spread across the galaxy. News hollows feature his daring rescues and brilliant victories. Yet, unlike the original timeline, his approach to combat shows remarkable restraint. Alongside his natural skill under Qui-Gon's mentorship, Anakin has developed a balanced approach to warfare. He takes calculated risks rather than impulsive chances. His decisions stem from tactical insight rather than a need to prove himself or a reckless disregard for danger. This measured approach makes him even more effective as a military leader, while keeping the dark tendencies that might have consumed him in check. As the conflict spreads, Qui-Gon and Anakin often serve on separate fronts. Anakin frequently partners with Obi-Wan Kenobi, their complementary fighting styles making them a formidable team. He also takes on his own Padawan Ahsoka, a spirited young Tura who challenges him to become not just a warrior, but a teacher. Shortly after the war begins, Anakin and Padme Amidala marry in a secret ceremony. While not openly condoning this violation of the Jedi Code, Qui-Gon helps Anakin during their occasional reunions, offering guidance on balancing his dual loyalties to the Jedi Order and his wife. These conversations often take place during rare moments of peace away from the front lines. Two friends talking rather than master and student from the shadows. Darth Sidious continues pulling strings, orchestrating battles and political crises to further his grand plan. Count Dooku, once Qui-Gon's own master and now Sidious's apprentice, leads the Separatist alliance with ruthless efficiency. During diplomatic encounters and battlefield communications, Dooku drops calculated hints about a Sith Lord controlling the Republic, sowing seeds of confusion and distrust. These suggestions trouble Qui-Gon deeply. Having known Dooku for decades, he recognizes the man's tactics, even as he grieves his former masters fall to darkness. As the war progresses, Qui-Gon becomes increasingly convinced that the conflict itself serves some hidden Sith agenda, benefiting neither the Republic nor the Separatists, but only the shadowy forces working behind both. Around the second year of the war, an old enemy resurfaces. Darth Maul, having survived his defeat on Naboo through sheer hatred and will, returns with mechanical legs and an unquenchable thirst for revenge. Together with his brother, Savage Opress, he establishes a growing criminal empire, leveraging the chaos of war for his own purposes. But unlike the original timeline, where his vendetta focused primarily on Obi-Wan, Maul now hunts Qui-Gon Jinn blaming the Jedi Master for his defeat and subsequent years of suffering. Their ongoing conflict becomes a significant subplot of the war, with brutal skirmishes. Whenever their paths cross, the conflict reaches a turning point. On Mandalore, Darth Sidious, perceiving Maul's growing power as a threat to his plans, sends Count Dooku to eliminate the rogue Sith. This leads to an extraordinary three-way battle between Maul and Savage Dooku and his dark side assassins, and a Jedi team led by Qui-Gon. The battle tears through Mandalore's capital, reducing ancient buildings to rubble as lightsabers clash in blinding displays of combat. In the chaos, Dooku gravely wounds Savage Opress, but both he and Maul manage to escape to fight another day. Though they fail to capture either Sith, the Jedi gain crucial insights about the fracturing dark side forces, learning that even among the Sith unity is an illusion. As the conflict drags on, Chancellor Palpatine accumulates emergency powers through a series of carefully engineered crises. The Republic gradually transforms into an autocracy under the guise of security and efficiency. While many accept these changes as necessary wartime measures, Qui-Gon becomes one of the most vocal critics of these developments. Within the Jedi Order, during council meetings, he questions what Republic will remain when the fighting stops. These concerns create tension, with more militaristic Jedi like Mace Windu prioritize winning the war over questioning its political consequences. Yet even those who disagree with Qui-Gon's positions cannot deny the wisdom behind his questions. Between military engagements, Qui-Gon deepens his study of the living force. He explores ancient Jedi texts and techniques that have been forgotten or overlooked for generations. Through meditation and research, he begins uncovering the secret to preserving consciousness after death, a technique that eluded him in the original timeline until after his physical demise. Recognizing the value of this knowledge, he shares these discoveries with Yoda and Obi-Wan. The ancient Jedi Master is particularly intrigued, sensing that such abilities may prove crucial in the darkness. Qui-Gon increasingly foresees. Together they quietly develop these techniques away from the battlefields and political arenas, where the fate of the galaxy seems to be decided by the third year of the war. Anakin's relationship with Chancellor Palpatine has become more complicated than it would have been. While still considering Palpatine a friend and mentor, Anakin views the Chancellor's political maneuvers with greater skepticism, the result of years of Qui-Gon's subtle guidance. When Palpatine appoints Anakin as his personal representative on the Jedi Council, a move designed to further isolate the young Jedi from his peers, Anakin does something unexpected. Rather than keeping the Chancellor's private conversations and manipulations secret, he reports them to Qui-Gon. This transparency prevents Palpatine from driving the wedge between Anakin and the Jedi that formed such a crucial part of his original plan. As the clone wars approach their climax in 19 BBY, Padme reveals to Anakin that she is pregnant in the original timeline. This news triggered desperate fears and a frantic search for ways to prevent the death Anakin foresaw in nightmares. These fears ultimately drove him to the dark side, willing to sacrifice everything to save her in this altered reality. Anakin still experiences troubling visions of Padme dying in childbirth, but instead of keeping these fears bottled up, he confides in Qui-Gon, the older Jedi counsels that dreams pass in time, and even prophetic visions show possibilities rather than certainties. He helps Anakin understand that his very fear of loss might create the outcome he dreads. This wisdom helps Anakin approach his visions with greater emotional balance, rather than panicking or seeking desperate measures. He discusses his concerns openly with both Qui-Gon and Padme herself. Together they make practical arrangements for the best medical care available. While Anakin works to accept that some things remain beyond his control as the war reaches its decisive moment, the foundations have been laid for a very different outcome than the tragedy that befell the original timeline. But Palpatine has not survived this long by being unprepared. The Sith Lord's grand plan is already adapting, finding new paths to power as old ones close. The final confrontation looms, and the fate of the galaxy hangs in the balance. Every shadow war eventually steps into the light. After 3 years of galaxy-spanning conflict, the Clone Wars reach their climax with a bold separatist strike at the heart of the Republic itself. General Grievous, the cyborg commander of the droid armies, launches a surprise attack on Coruscant, breaching the capital's defenses, and apparently kidnapping Chancellor Palpatine. Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi lead a daring rescue mission, piloting their star fighters through the chaos of orbital battle. Meanwhile, Qui-Gon Jinn, now 61 years old, coordinates the broader defense of the capital from the Jedi Temple, directing clone forces and civilian evacuations as the city planet becomes a battlefield. The rescue operation unfolds much as it did in the original timeline. The two Jedi fight their way through Grievous's flagship, eventually locating the Chancellor bound to a chair in the ship's observation deck. But waiting for them is Count Dooku, Qui-Gon's former master, and now Darth Sidious's apprentice. What follows is an intense lightsaber duel. Obi-Wan is quickly incapacitated, leaving Anakin to face the Sith Lord alone. Drawing on his years of training and combat experience, Anakin fights with controlled power and precision. Eventually he gains the upper hand, disarming Dooku and leaving the Sith Lord kneeling before him, defeated here. The timelines diverge dramatically. In the original reality, Palpatine manipulated Anakin into executing the helpless Dooku. In our altered version, as Anakin stands over the disarmed Sith Lord with crossed lightsabers at his throat, Palpatine urges him to kill Dooku, calling it justified vengeance for all the suffering he has caused. Anakin hesitates. In his mind he hears Qui-Gon's teachings echoing: when you hold power over life and death, your choices reveal your true nature. Years of guidance from a master who understood his emotional struggles give Anakin the clarity he needs in this crucial moment. Anakin lowers his weapons and tells the Chancellor that Dooku must stand trial, that killing an unarmed prisoner is not the Jedi way. Palpatine masks his disappointment with a gracious nod, but this moment marks a critical failure in his plan to turn Anakin to the dark side. Meanwhile, Dooku observes this exchange with growing comprehension. He sees Palpatine's willingness to discard him after decades of service and realizes the true nature of the Sith Master's apprentice relationship. Rather than dying at Anakin's hands, he is taken into Republic custody, his mind churning with revelations about his own master's betrayal. After returning to Coruscant, Anakin seeks out Qui-Gon and shares his troubling experience. He tells his former master that the Chancellor seemed disappointed when he spared Dooku, almost as if he wanted to see an execution. This observation, combined with other concerning patterns in Palpatine's behavior and Anakin's ongoing nightmares about Padme's death, raises Qui-Gon's suspicions to a breaking point after meditating on these revelations. Qui-Gon approaches Yoda and Mace Windu with a shocking theory. Chancellor Palpatine may be the Sith Lord they have been seeking for over a decade. When the senior council members express skepticism, Qui-Gon methodically lays out the evidence. Palpatine's steady accumulation of power, his unusual interest in Anakin since childhood, and the way the Clone Wars have systematically weakened both the Republic and the Jedi. While strengthening the Chancellor's position, the pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together. The mysterious Darth Sidious, who orchestrated the Trade Federation blockade of Naboo. Years ago, the creation of the Clone Army, before the Republic had any apparent need for it, the convenient crisis that led to emergency powers, even the kidnapping they just resolved, may have been staged to further cement Palpatine's control. While the Council deliberates, Palpatine makes his final attempt to turn Anakin. Requesting a private meeting, he tells the young Jedi the story of Darth Plagueis, the wise Sith Lord so powerful he could prevent people from dying. It's the perfect bait for someone haunted by visions of losing his wife. But in this reality, Anakin has been trained to question motives and recognize manipulation. Hearing Palpatine speak of Sith teachings with such familiarity triggers his suspicions. He asks directly how the Chancellor would know such secrets unless he were a Sith himself. The carefully maintained facade begins to crack. Palpatine realizes his years of patient grooming have failed in a last, desperate appeal. He offers to save Padme from the death Anakin has foreseen, but instead of being tempted, Anakin activates his lightsaber. He identifies Palpatine as the Sith Lord they've been searching for all these years, then backs toward the door and leaves to alert the Jedi Council, knowing his cover is blown. Palpatine prepares for the inevitable confrontation. Decades of planning must now give way to direct action. Qui-Gon, Mace Windu, and Anakin lead a team of Jedi Masters to arrest the Chancellor. In his office, when they declare him under arrest in the name of the Galactic Senate, Palpatine's transformation is chilling. His kindly demeanor vanishes, replaced by cold fury as he ignites a crimson lightsaber and unleashes the full power of the dark side. The ensuing battle shakes the very foundations of the Republic's seat of power, wherein the original timeline Palpatine quickly dispatched 3 Jedi Masters. He now faces a more formidable trio. Wu's mastery of Vapid, Qui-Gon's deep connection to the living force, and Anakin's raw power present a challenge even for the Sith Master to Jedi still fall to his blade. But the remaining 3 gradually gain the upper hand, realizing he cannot win through combat alone. Sidious triggers hidden protocols in his office. Alarms blare throughout Coruscant as the Sith Lord creates enough chaos to reach his private shuttle before the Jedi can apprehend him. He transmits a galaxy-wide command: execute Order 66 from his fleeing shuttle. He remotely releases Count Dooku from Republic custody. The apprentice he was willing to sacrifice hours earlier is now needed. More than ever across the galaxy, clone troopers receive the programmed order and turn on their Jedi generals without hesitation or remorse. On Coruscant, the 51st Legion marches on the Jedi Temple, but without Anakin leading the attack as Darth Vader. The clones face organized resistance. Qui-Gon, sensing the betrayal through the Force moments before it happens, warns the Temple, allowing many younglings and Jedi to escape the initial assault. As night falls on Coruscant, The galaxy descends into chaos. The Jedi Order is decimated. Though not as thoroughly as in the original timeline, Yoda confronts Sidious in the Senate chamber, but is forced to retreat. Qui-Gon, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Mace Windu lead a desperate evacuation of Jedi survivors. Padme goes into labor as the capital falls to the newly declared Empire, and Emperor Palpatine, having lost his carefully cultivated apprentice in Anakin, but regained Dooku and possibly turned some fallen Jedi, addresses the Senate to establish his empire. His face now bears the marks of the dark side energy he unleashed during the confrontation, a physical manifestation of the corruption that has festered beneath the surface of the Republic. For decades, the galaxy has changed forever, but in this timeline, a spark of hope remains that was snuffed out in the original, a spark that will grow into a flame of resistance against the darkness to come. Hope can emerge from the darkest moments in the aftermath of Order 66 and Palpatine's declaration of the First Galactic Empire. The surviving Jedi scatter across the stars like seeds in the wind, but unlike the original timeline, they are not alone and directionless. They have leadership. Qui-Gon Jinn, now leading the Jedi alongside Master Yoda and Mace Windu, establishes a hidden sanctuary on Ashla, a moon of the planet Tython. Meanwhile, something miraculous happens that stands in stark contrast to the tragedy of the original timeline. Padme Amidala gives birth to twins, Luke and Leia, in a secure medical facility on Polis Massa. But in this reality, she survives the difference. Anakin Skywalker's approach to his visions, under Qui-Gon's guidance over the years, he had learned to accept the natural cycle of life and death, preventing the desperate attachment that would have contributed to Padme's loss of will to live. The young family goes into hiding on Alderaan under the protection of Senator Bail Organa. Though Anakin must limit contact with his children for their safety, they grow up knowing their father, understanding his periodic absences as necessary sacrifices for the greater good. This family unit, which never existed in the original timeline, becomes a powerful symbol of what the Resistance fights to protect. Qui-Gon, 62 years old and keenly aware of his mortality, dedicates his remaining years to preparing the next generation for the eventual confrontation with the Sith. He divides his time between guiding the scattered Jedi resistance, identifying and training new forces, sensitive individuals discovered across the galaxy, and deepening his research into becoming one with the Force after death. This technique, which he had begun exploring during the Clone Wars, represents a new path forward for the Jedi Order. The Empire is not idle during these years. Emperor Palpatine and his apprentice, Count Dooku, hunt the survivors of Order 66 relentlessly. The Emperor also recruits Inquisitors from fallen Jedi, creating a dark mirror of the Order he destroyed. But another factor complicates Imperial rule. Darth Maul, having escaped during the chaos of the regime change, continues his independent operations against both the Empire and the surviving Jedi, particularly maintaining his vendetta against Qui-Gon. This creates a complex web of darkside users, working both with and against each other. The fractured Sith leadership with Palpatine and Dooku at the top, but Maul operating independently, creates vulnerabilities in the Empire that would not have existed under the strict rule of two from the original timeline. Since Maul never ran into Kenobi on Naboo and Luke had Anakin watching over him periodically on Alderaan, there was no confrontation between Maul and Kenobi on Tatooine. Leaving Maul alive and full of hatred for the years to come. Over the next decade, a galaxy-wide resistance begins to take shape. Bail Organa, Monmouth, and other former senators establish the political framework of what will become the Rebel Alliance. Meanwhile, the surviving Jedi operate as a shadow network, undermining Imperial operations and rescuing Force-sensitive children from the Emperor's grasp. These rescued children receive training unlike anything in the old Jedi Order. Influenced by unorthodox philosophy, they learn to balance emotional connections with Jedi discipline. They are taught that feelings are not enemies to be suppressed, but energies to be understood and channeled. This creates a more sustainable approach than the rigid pre-Empire order, one that might be more resistant to the temptations of the dark side. Around 10 BBY, approximately 9 years into Imperial rule, Qui-Gon receives troubling intelligence about a superweapon being constructed in the Outer Rim. Now, 71 years old and feeling the weight of his years, he nonetheless recognizes the critical nature of this threat. Together with Anakin, he embarks on a dangerous mission to sabotage what will later be known as the Death Star Project. During this heist operation, they encounter an old enemy. Darth Maul has infiltrated the project not as an Imperial agent, but pursuing his own agenda. To steal the technology, years of surviving on the margins of power have transformed Maul from a single-minded weapon of revenge into a complex strategist driven by ambition. The resulting three-way conflict between the Jedi Team Maul's forces and Imperial security becomes the stuff of whispered legend throughout the galaxy. As the mission reaches its climax, Qui-Gon makes a decision that will echo through history, with Imperial forces closing in and escape routes vanishing. Someone must stay behind to ensure the others can escape with the critical technical data they've gathered in a moment that brings their decades-long rivalry full circle. Qui-Gon faces Maul one final time. Their lightsabers clash amid the half-constructed superstructure of what will become the Empire's ultimate weapon. As their blades lock, Qui-Gon sees not just his old enemy, but a being shaped by pain and betrayal. There is a moment of understanding between them, warrior to warrior, before the battle continues. In the end, Qui-Gon sacrifices himself to allow Anakin and their team to escape. As Maul's blade pierces his chest, Qui-Gon smiles with serene acceptance. He tells Anakin the Force will be with him always. Then something extraordinary happens. His body vanishes, becoming one with the Force. At the moment of death, he has mastered the technique that eluded him in the original timeline, becoming the first Jedi in generations to physically transcend death in this way. Qui-Gon's sacrifice and the stolen Death Star plans mark a turning point in the resistance against the Empire. Anakin, now 32 years old, steps fully into the role of Jedi leadership alongside Obi-Wan Wu and Grandmaster Yoda. His children Luke and Leia begin their formal Jedi training at age 10. Learning not just about the Force, but about their heritage and the grandfather figure they never met, a wise Jedi Master named Qui-Gon Jinn, who believed in the prophecy of balance and changed the course of galactic history through a single moment of deep connection to the living Force. The years leading up to the Battle of Yavin unfold with significant differences from the original timeline. Without Darth Vader's fearsome presence, the Empire relies more heavily on conventional military might, and the growing Death Star Project, the Rebel Alliance, strengthened by Jedi involvement, from the beginning develops more rapidly and establishes bases across the galaxy. Luke and Leia grow into powerful young Jedi under their father's guidance, their twin connection in the Force creating a bond that makes them formidable when working together, and occasionally, in moments of great need or uncertainty, Qui-Gon appears as a luminous Force ghost, offering wisdom that bridges the physical and spiritual realms. Our story concludes at the Battle of Yavin, nearly 20 years after Palpatine's rise to power. The Death Star finally operational despite the Resistance's best efforts to delay it, moves into position to destroy the Rebel base on Yavin 4, but the Alliance is ready, having prepared for this moment since receiving the technical data from Qui-Gon's final mission. The assault against the space station features not just Luke in an X-Wing fighter, but a coordinated effort involving multiple Force users, Anakin, his children, and other Jedi trained in the years since Order 66. Fly alongside the best pilots the Alliance can muster. Their presence in the Force creates confusion among Imperial gunners, making the Rebel fighters seem to appear and disappear from targeting systems. During the trench run, when Luke faces his moment of truth with TIE fighters closing in and the target approaching, the Force ghost of Qui-Gon appears alongside him in the cockpit. The spectral Jedi Master reminds Luke what he taught his father. The living Force connects all things. Let go of your conscious self and act on instinct. With this guidance and the support of his family through their Force bond, Luke makes the impossible shot that destroys the Death Star. As celebrations erupt across the Rebel base, Anakin embraces his children, their faces illuminated by the joy of victory. Looking up, they see the transparent figures of Qui-Gon and Q. They represent the past, present, and future of a Jedi tradition that has bent but not broken in this altered timeline. The prophecy of the Chosen One finds fulfillment, not through Anakin's fall and redemption, but through his steadfast commitment to the light. Guided by Qui-Gon's wisdom, balance comes to the Force, not through equal measures of light and darkness, but through a more nuanced understanding of the Force itself. A new Jedi Order rises from the ashes of the old one that acknowledges emotion without surrendering to passion, that values connection without succumbing to possession, that recognizes how the actions of not just one chosen one, but an entire lineage of dedicated Jedi can transform the fate of countless lives across the stars. And it all began with a single moment of clarity in a generator complex on Naboo, a moment when a Jedi Master named Qui-Gon Jinn found perfect harmony with the living Force and changed everything that would follow. One life that touched countless others. One ripple that became a wave powerful enough to reshape the galaxy.